transition, or did story time happening? Are we recovered, or are we still where we were last?
Hey,
We're
you.
right where we left off,
Cool.
except the only difference is that Dallas, like, his eyeballs sort of grow back into his eye sockets. Like the liquid kind of refills the eyeballs and they kind of become solid again. And he sits up and looks around, and the scene has slightly changed. Like the fires have died down. So, does everybody have characters and everything? Are we good to go?
Yep.
Yeah.
If we are, I'll pull you all into Buckskin over here.
Yeah.
Sure.
Who are you gonna call?
Matt
Ghostbusters.
Shaker.
Oh no, but
Ghost Buckskin.
Off the wreckage.
I recognize this place.
All right.
I don't like it.
So yeah, you guys remember up here is where those infernals had that wagon set up and the extra chain gun and everything, and around here is where Scrap ran and picked up the bullets, and then that wagon was heading off this direction, heading east, and blew up.
In
this
my house
little-
with a fucking marmot, man.
In this little house right here is where Dyer, the leader of the outlaw gang that was in town, that's where he was. Remember, he was holding up his hand, and just by closing his hand once, he would like claim a human life.
Yeah.
And in the time it took you guys to kind of move in and basically assess and attack, he killed all three of those family members in that house. Now, Dallas, when you were basically, nothing more than beef jerky and bones there for a few hours, old Jeb, it kind of really tugged at his heartstrings to see this whole family been laid waste. And he went up to that boy and he kind of, well, how would you describe it, Jason? He kind of dug deep on your faith and kind of tried to give it to him or kind of bring him back from the brink, right?
Right. A little high.
So through a sort of a sheer act of will, Jeb kind of brought this boy back. And that same kind of moment that the boy is starting to have eyelids again, that's about when Dallas, too, is starting to shake his head. And actually, I think for your part, Jeb, that doesn't feel like coincidence. It feels like maybe the smoke is clearing off of this town for the moment. And as that smoke clears, you notice several things changing. You see that you look over at Link, and he like kind of falls into his boots. Like his boots are now on the dirt.
Right.
And he's looking at his hands, and like he's got wind moving through his clothes, and like a leaf lands on his shoulder, and he feels it, and like he's much more solid than he was before. And as sort of all these moments are happening together, that's when Cord is kind of, I believe it was through here, right? Alex kind of walked into town.
Yes.
And on Cord's side, you had come into town and encountered these undertakers right out here, right?
Yes.
Remember that? And they were trying to bury the corpse of Ed Martins, but they were also arguing about this thing that you don't know about called the seed of the Slayer, or the seed of evil. And they're saying basically like it's got to be resolved, like this isn't over. But you didn't really fully, I don't think, resolve that situation because you saw Dallas and went into town. Is that all accurate? I'm trying to make sure I got it all.
Correct.
Yeah, and then you kind of came in a little bit wary, not quite sure what this town was all about, but you saw your old buddy, and that's why you came up here in the first place. And then Dallas, we're kind of retconning this friend of yours into your story, which is basically, as a gambler, someone who basically cannot be trusted. Ever. You tend to leave towns with nothing but a bunch of grudges behind you, but there's always been this one guy, this sharpshooter named Cord. And no matter how low you sank, or how drunk you got, or how lost you were, or a couple times you were near dead because you bilked on some bets and got shot, and every damn time this guy Cord kind of shows up out of the shadows and helps you out. And he's never really asked for much in return. And you don't really have anyone else like that in this world because everybody kind of doesn't like you. Except bar owners. They love you. They love when you show up. The money just starts flowing. So, anyways, you as you're sort of regaining your living status. So, before we were kind of treating Muerto as like a complete transformation, and after that big discussion last session, Muerto and Smoke are now conditions. And so, in Ghost Mountain, if you go unburied, you gain the condition of being Muerto, but it doesn't make you like a zombie. And then if you are Muerto for too long, which I think is a very flexible concept, you actually, it becomes permanent and you actually become like, you start to fall apart and disintegrate.
Okay.
So there's no Muertos that are like 5 years old, that it doesn't happen that way. And then similar with Smoke, the way we were describing Smoke is it's kind of like you're too far gone. And I think the way that Matt was describing is it's like a soul that hasn't picked a side in the war, and they're sort of caught in between. And the more in between they are, and the more indecisive they become morally, the less physical they become, and eventually they actually wisp away. They just become like almost a poltergeist. Or I think actually in some of the towns you guys have been in, there's some like really dark stories about what happens to Smokes. Like they're still people, but they're sort of caught in the wind forever. Like they wind up in sort of the chaos, and they don't get to die. And like it's a fate worse than death. So
Yeah.
all of these things are kind of passing, actually. Not entirely. Like Dallas is still, got some bony hands and looking pretty rough for wear. And every once in a while, Lincoln tries to grab his gun and his hand goes through it. But for the moment, things are much better. It's a little bit like like the background music has changed as a way to think of it in a movie sort of tone. The clouds kind of lift. You see a little more of the sun. And also in our last measure that we had, some souls were saved.
Mm-hmm.
And honestly, you guys don't know what would have become of this town if you hadn't showed up and done what heroes do. All these people could be dead. So I think especially in your mind, Jeb, this is a little bit of a ray of light here. So if I remember right, Emma Thorson was the sort of matron of this town. And she's the sort of leader of this town, this older woman. But she's like a frontierswoman, woman, She's got a rifle over one shoulder, a 6-shooter, a satchel. And she comes out of this house here. And as you guys are kind of in this moment, she sees the boy starting to recover and goes to help him a little bit next to Jeb. And Jeb, she looks up at you and she's just like, "However can we thank you? Who are you folks?"
Well, we're just some strangers in the right place at the right time. I think Jeb actually takes a moment. He looks at the Gatling gun that he had kind of slung over his back, and he drops it to the ground and says, "I don't need this anymore."
Nice. So yeah, it hits the ground, and as it does, you see it like instantly starts to rust in a not natural way. Like this weapon was sort of being kept intact by some force you don't fully understand. So you drop this Gatling gun, it begins to corrode in the dust, and Emma sees this. She's just like, have you come to rid us of the Dyer gang? Is this it? Is this the salvation we've been praying for? And then Cord, let's go to you. So I'm just we rolled initiative in a way, and it was Jeb. So Cord, you're up.
Howdy, ma'am. My name is Cord. I just walked into this here town. Have no idea what just transpired, but I've come a long way, and I'd be much obliged if you could help refill my pack of supplies. I'm running kind of low. Other than that, I don't know anything about any gangs. I just came here to try to find my friend Dallas, and it seems he's gotten himself into more trouble again. You stupid
she
wretch.
says, we were expecting a stage from Buckskin, but it just hasn't shown up. And I do recognize Mr. Lincoln over there, and usually he's the stage boss, but y'all must have run into trouble. And without our supply run, I'm afraid we're mighty short, but we could spare a few. So let's pop up a boop. What do we get? So she has 2 supplies for you, Cord.
Thank you, ma'am. I sure
And
am grateful.
She snaps her fingers, and old Tom Funtz comes running out of the same house, and she, mumbles some stuff to him. Basically, wants him to go get a bowl of soup for all of you guys, and bring out a couple stools and get a fire going, and let's show a little outdoor hospitality. And it's kind of an autumn evening, so it's a nice night to sit by a fire. So she kind of comes over here. They got a little fire pit set up, and she gets it going, and Tom brings out a couple log benches, and she kind of has bowls of soup for everybody. So Link?
Lincoln is just kind of like wringing his hands, like still kind of like taking in like just like the breeze, and he kneels down and grabs a handful of dry earth and just kind of rubs it on his hands just to reassure himself that he can feel it again, And he can't remember much. He can't remember much of what just transpired. When he smokes out, it's like he's Link, but he's not Link.
Yeah, and you haven't actually a sinking feeling that you blew somebody away. Like you remember raising your double barrel to someone like point blank and blowing them away, but you're not quite sure who or exactly what happened. A little bit of like an Incredible Hulk kind of feeling. Is that what you mean?
Yeah, a little bit. And I look over at Jeb and said, "Jeb, is that you?"
Hello, Lincoln. You're looking a lot better.
He's like, "I didn't think it would come back this time." How long? How long this time?
Oh, afraid it was a couple of weeks, friend.
What did I do? What happened here? I notice I'm a couple rounds short in this shotgun.
Don't worry, Lincoln. You were a hero.
That's good. That's good. He's gonna go down. He's gonna go sit down with some soup.
Great. So when you do, Emma, since you're sort of the first to go over there, she kind of pats the bench next to her, sit down, and she goes, "If it's comfort, I saw it. I saw it all. You blew old Dyer away, just blew him to bits. Only trouble is, we've done that before. We've blown Dyer away with dynamite. We burned him alive one time, hanged him, shot him, stabbed him. Seems like years now. I can't really quite tell, actually, how much time has passed, but he just won't stay dead, I tell you. I don't mean to lay my troubles on you. It's just, I'm not sure this is over yet." Dallas, how you respond to this as you're kind of coming back, basically? You're like, oh, yeah.
Dallas is sitting there again. Is just getting used to healing up. He kind of just cracks his neck a little bit, pops his knuckles, trying to get everything back in order again, because that felt weird. And he kind of looks back over at Cord, and he's like, "Hello, old friend. How you doing?"
Hey there, buddy. You look like hell.
It's but a flesh wound. What brings you around here? You hearing I get in a bunch of trouble again?
I was trying to catch up with you. I figured you'd be the one who needed help.
You know me. I never need too much help. I usually
You look like a damn skeleton, for God's sakes. I kind of figure you need to help.
Other than that.
Yeah, don't worry about this. It'll go pass in time. I'm going to go over there and sit next to that little lady over there and see how she's doing.
I think that's a good idea.
Great. Cool. So, Dallas, are you good on hit points? You all figured out? Were you down a few, or were you like, are you good to go?
Yeah, I think I'm good to go.
Okay, cool. All right, so you go on over, sit down to Emma, and she gives you a nice hot bowl of soup, and boy, it does you a right good. And she actually sort of puts her hand on your back. And that feeling of like that sort of gentle touch, like on your bare ribs. So you'll only go basically start sort of disintegrating if you're muerto for 1d6 more days.
Okay. I will do
Oh,
that.
great. There you go. So you got a 5-day fuse. So like a second ago, it felt like it could be 30 minutes before you start going to pieces. But once she kind of gives you some hot soup and you feel some sort of human contact, you got 5 days left, and you can feel it in your head. Like you can almost hear a voice, like in The Ring, saying, "I'll see you in 5 days."
To hell
Like
you will.
that's there's no way that's real. That can't be a thing.
Yeah. To hell
So-
you will.
So everybody's starting to gather over by the fire there, Jeb, and you and Cord can take one more, and then I get to be Emma. So Jeb, what'll it be?
One more round, you mean?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I just want to make sure I didn't miss something. Jeb will look around in sort of the wreckage of the homes, and he's looking for a cross. He lost his
Oh
cross.
wow, great! Give me an easy wisdom. 9 wisdom.
No cross.
Ooh. So actually, this is truly disconcerting to you. Like maybe this is part of why this town's been terrorized. Maybe they've lost their faith. Maybe they aren't. Maybe they don't have a pastor in this town. Like if you can't find a cross, that's kind of troubling.
Yeah.
Jeb.
Yes, Lincoln.
He unbuttons his shirt a little bit, takes his off, and hands it to you.
Oh.
Um,
Thank you kindly, Lincoln.
While I can, while I'm still able to give you anything, he's gonna do you far better good than it will me.
Never underestimate it, sir.
So that's because you were stripped of your gear, right, Jason?
I'm sorry?
That's because you were stripped of your gear when you guys fell, right?
Right, yeah. I mean, the only
Yeah.
item I could save was my holy book.
Yep. Oh man, that's awesome. You had the huge badass vampire killing cross. And it's out in the desert down by the edge,
That's all right. I'll make another.
laying in the dirt. Okay, well, Cord, so you see Jeb over there, and these guys are exchanging this kind of moment. And Cord, you've got just a second here. What will you do?
Yeah, he just wanders over by the fire with his hat in his hand and kind of like this. This sure is a lot to take in, but man, this soup looks mighty tasty. I sure would be obliged for a bowl because it's been a long time since I've had a hot meal.
Great. So you guys are all gathered around, and everybody can recover 1d6. There you go. Everybody can take 4 more HP if you're not already full. So as you're eating, the firelight's kind of coming up over Emma, and Tom comes up behind her, and a few other townsfolk, old Bonnie Thomas. And then remember Big Bear, the white guy? White guy with an Indian name?
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Yes.
Big Bear walks over, and he's kind of standing outside the fire ring, and they're all gathered and they're looking at the 4 of you like with a lot of expectation in their eyes. Like they're basically hanging on sort of what you're going to do and say next. But Emma takes the lead, and she's, sort of watching you guys eat, sees that everybody's feeling better, and she goes, well, story as best I can tell it is that the Dyer gang started coming up here, 2 years ago, not long after the big storm. Now they were going out over to the old Henson Ranch, terrorizing them poor folks. Then always coming back, mucking around up near the rocks up there, just north, and making enough TNT to blow this whole mountain to heaven. I don't know what the hell they're doing, but they're shipping that TNT off in wagon loads. And then once every 3-4 days, off to the Henson place, back the next day, pack up a bunch of TNT in wooden crates, and then off they go in their wagon. And they done it so many times, there's wagon tracks heading east of town. So a few times we got our courage up and tried to stand up to them. A bunch of us either got killed, or we would kill them all and they'd be back a week later. I don't know how it's possible or what they're doing. Now, other than that, we really only got two things to worry about in this town. One, we need to make sure that Ed Martin's soul is put to rest, or that Slayer will return. And I don't know if you folks have ever dealt with one of those creatures, but there's only one way to put him down. That seed has to be planted, and there's only one place it can be done. That's up in the Tangle. Now, the other item is, I noticed that a few of you are a little worse for wear. Now, there is a solution. There's a Kanuska burial ground up north of here, up in the snow. Folks say they can cleanse the dead right out of you, bring you right back. But everyone I've known that goes up there doesn't come back. So I'm not sure what to do next. I'm just a frontier woman. I used to be a wife. Now I'm a widow. I'm just trying to keep it together. You guys are the best hope we have. So whatever you guys want to do, well, that's what Buckskin wants to do. So Link, how do you respond to that story?
It says, it said that they can cleanse the dead right out of you. What about this? He just kind of like forces like a little puff of smoke out of his hand.
She's sort of taken aback a little bit, and she's like, I don't know what that is, but that's what that Dyer fella has. That's every time we put a bullet through his head, we just see a puff of smoke. It seems like he's gone. A week later, he comes back. I'm not sure if that's dead or undead. I don't know what that is.
Who would?
Well,
around these parts. I mean, I'm not from here.
I suppose the two biggest towns you can go to find someone who can do some thaumaturgy. That would either be Dead Rock or Thompson Gulch. Those are both 4 days to Dead Rock and more than a week down to Thompson Gulch. But we don't get down there. I mean, if I were to be gone for 2 weeks, I'd fear I'd come back to a smoking ruin.
Well, the way I see it, gentlemen, we need to get you all right. Let's go see these Kanuska folk and see if you can cleanse the dead right out you.
All right, Dallas.
He looks at him. He kind of just put the finger back in place again. He's like, "Damn finger." Sounds good because I can't get my trigger finger sitting there popping out all the time.
All right, that sounds like two notions for heading up north. Old Jeb, what do you say?
Old Jeb is of split mind. I mean, on the one hand, perhaps the Kanuska tribe could teach us how to cleanse the dead here so that they can't come back to hurt folks no more. But the other side believes that the real solution to our problem, as he plays with his bony hand, is that we need to do the Lord's work. He's the only one who can really restore us. And so I think we need to head on up and perhaps follow the wagon tracks, see what good we can do while we can.
Yeah, so to summarize what she's saying, basically whatever these guys were terrorizing this mountainside for, they were packing it up into wagons and heading off east, and there is a followable track. Yeah. So whatever their sort of evil purpose was, it is followable. All right. So that's a little bit of a split vote from old Jeb. He's got a more nuanced mind. So what do you say, Cord?
Well, this here's a dilemma. And I'm all for helping these folk and seeing what these bad men are up to. But at the same time, you boys look like hell. And could be that you boys would be more effective and all on the first problem if you was laid right. So I feel like my vote's to kind of make you guys whole, although I feel like that might be a mite selfish as far as helping these folks.
So they see that you guys are starting to agree on heading up to the Knuska burial grounds. And Big Bear, who's this sort of tall white guy, whose name is probably Mike, but he likes to be called Big Bear. He says, "It's a good decision. It's a good decision. Hold right here." And he trots off to this sort of smaller house in the back of town. And he comes back out, and he's got 2 Knuska blankets. So if you guys can split those as you want. And he's also got, just a sec. I got new things here. I love having new things. Here we go. He's also, so he comes back out with 3 blankets. He's got 2 Knuska blankets, and he's got a bush blanket, which you guys have heard about. Never quite seen one in person, but these things are amazing. So it's got this, it's almost like the Wild West version of like a Real Tree hoodie. You guys know Real Tree?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's
Yes.
like super convincing camouflage, but this is like been woven in wool. But it like perfectly matches the kind of the ground and the scrub in this area of the mountain. And really, you could just throw it over even 1 or 2 people and just vanish.
Cool.
So you've got a bush blanket and you've got 2 Knuska blankets. And he comes back out and he says, this is all I have. It isn't much. Maybe it will help when the time comes. And Emma's like, "Would you quit talking in that silly native accent, Big Bear? We all know your name is Mike. Don't start talking about the old ways." So you guys can mark those down as you need. And when you guys are done, Emma is kind of like, "Well, you boys, aren't going to get any better by sitting around. So I can show you the path. It's right up this way." And she just stands right up, spins the cylinder in a 6-shooter, puts it back in, checks her carbine, and starts heading right up here past the rocks.
Cool.
And everyone in town has that kind of, Westworld look as you guys are leaving town. They kind of look just sort of frozen. They're just kind of like, I really hope they come back. Drag my
Yes.
little thingy over here.